Live. You're listening to Live with Men, the podcast.
So this is Men, the podcast about your what we do, we talk everything kuhusiana na mental health, lakini tulikuwa tunazungumzia zaidi au tulikuwa tumejikita zaidi kuzungumza kuhusiana na wanaume. And again, why tunazungumzia wanaume? Moja, kunormalize conversation kuhusiana na mental health kwa wanaume. Pili, ni sio kitu ambacho watu wanazungumza. Tatu, we've said this over and over again, bado tutaisema tena, wanaume sio miungo watu jamani. Yani sio miungo watu, we are not super beings. Sio kwamba tuna roho kama ubao, kwamba tuna hisia and stuff like that, you know. Tunakuwa affected na mambo mengi yanayofanyika, na vile vile hakuna conversation kuhusiana na mental health kwa wanaume ambayo inatokea. At least objectively, I would like to think, you know. At least objectively. So hii imekuwa ni safe space for so long kuhusiana ambayo inaweza ikaleta brothers together na kuja kukaa na kuzungumziana kuhusiana na different challenges ambazo tunapitia, how to overcome. Sometimes maybe not how to overcome, but just to know kwamba you're not the only one ambaye unapitia what you're going through. And that alone is enough kujua kwamba sio kwamba wewe peke yako umebeba dunia, kwamba kila mtu ana mizigo yake huko. So basically that is what we do. Mimi naitwa Michael Baruti and Nadia is here with us.
Yes.
Nadia is a brother by association. We used to say men by association. Now we graduate, you're not just a man. Now you're a brother. We can now invite you on our inner circle. Yeah. You've earned that. You've earned that. So yeah, Nadia is a counselor / therapist. She runs her own practice inaitwa Mind Matters, ambayo unaweza ukaipata Twitter Mind Matters TZ, Instagram Mind Matters TZ. Lakini kama you wanna book a session through Mind Matters, you go to the Instagram or Facebook, there's the link kwenye bio, itakupeleka kwenye website, and then utapata njia ya kuweza kuwasiliana naye. So basically ukipata hizo stages zote, manake kweli utashinda naye. Yeah, that's like an elimination process. Tunaanza kupunguza wale ambao hawana shida. You know, if you go through all those steps, ukampata, then you're good. Unaweza kuwasiliana naye. And today on our first episode, Toka Tumerudi, episode yetu number 51, we are blessed as always. We are lucky. We have another brother with us, Bwana Justice Rutenge.
Yes.
My man. Kwema
Kabisa.
First thing first, ongera kwa kuoa. Umefanya kitu ambacho vijana wengine wanakimbia mjini hapa.
Asante.
You literally run in the opposite direction watu wanapoenda. Watu wanaenda huku, Justice umeamua kwenda huku.
Nimeamua nifuate nyayo zako.
Thank you. Tembea na mimi Justice, tembea na mimi, utaona ufalme wa Mungu. Tembea na mimi. So congratulations man.
Thanks a lot man.
Yeah. And well, what a Justice, I was telling him here kwamba Justice ukifuatilia page yake Instagram is all about cooking man. Anafanya ni moja kwamba anafanya sisi wengine tuonekane useless husbands. Kwamba we don't cook, all we do is play by game football na kuentertain watoto na vitu kama hivyo. Kwa hiyo bwana Justice anakwenda mbele zaidi, anapika na nini na vitu kama hivyo.
Anaonyesha a different view of what a husband should look like.
I don't know what does that say about me, Nadia? I literally get a different view. What does that say about my view?
There's many options. There's a stay-home mom. There's a working mom.
There's a stay-home dad.
Stay-home dad, a working dad. There's a mom who doesn't cook, and there are moms who cook. There are dads who don't cook, and dads who cook.
In addition to working as well, you know, so
yes.
They're not mutually exclusive.
They're not,
yeah.
So you're relegated to either cooking
or simplify.
And trying to make me feel better. Nisijione useless kabisa. Yeah, it is. It goes beyond that.
You know? But it's a different template.
It is a different template. So Justice here. Justice Karim sana mzee.
Asante sana.
And thank you for giving us this time, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving us your time. We really appreciate it, because babu tunajua everybody has their own thing going right now. Like you come to akitenga muda kusema kwamba let's come tukutane and then share knowledge, it means a lot to us. So thank you for having us here, man.
Thanks for having me. I've been a follower of the show for quite some time now.
We are honored, my man. We are honored
to be here finally.
Yeah. So before we get to tunachotaka kuzungumza, you are a comms expert. I would like to say that. Ni mtu wa communication.
I think expert is such a big word. I shy away from it many times.
Let's say ni mtu wa mawasiliano.
Yeah, but I do communication.
You do communication, yeah. So you do communication for a living. So tell us about your job a little bit, and then we'll dive into what we want to talk about it here.
Right. So I am trained in both communication and development, and so my history is nimekuwa nikifanya kazi katika an intersection of these two things. So if I may call myself an expert in something, that would be development communication. So I consult for special international organizations, supporting their work that has to do with media, communications. But other than that, I also do what in this field we call results measurement, which is monitoring, evaluation, research, learning, kind of the best way to think about it, become an audit function, programs. Yes, so that's what I do, and I also run a creative communication agency that mostly, especially does animation, and we were lucky at some point to do at least 2 seasons of a national political satire show called Pillar TV. It was first on ITV and it went to clouds. Yeah, so that's what I do. I consult in that area of communication.
So Justice is a comms guy. Ni mtu wa mawasiliano. So I guess by now here nakupa a little bit of if you're listening, that gives a little bit of a gist about kitu ambacho nataka kuja kuzungumzia leo. So basically nataka kuzungumzia wanaume na communication, au wanaume na mawasiliano, wanaume na kuwasiliana, wanaume na namna ya kuwasiliana, wanaume na namna ya kutowasiliana. Kwa nini wanaume hatuwasiliani? Je, wanaume tunawasiliana? Wanaume tunajua? It's a lot of things, man. And it's a lot of things, and as we go on, maybe tutaweza ku unpack one after another. But I think if you go back, one of the reasons about tulisema kwamba let's speak about it ni kwamba I think kama mtu unayetusikiliza sasa hivi on social media, nadhani utaona cases, a lot of suicide cases ambazo kwa zimetokea between January, February, March, April. And then, I mean, we see them every day, but I feel like there was a moment hata kwa Tanzania we are getting a lot of cases, na it's not even cases ambazo zinatokea kwenye miji mikubwa kama Dar es Salaam, Arusha, Mwanza. You find cases ambazo zinatokea interior parts of Tanzania zinakuwa reported kwamba mtu amejitundika kwenye mti, mtu amejichoma, mtu amejiua na nini vitu kama hivyo. Na tukaanza kufuatilia conversation nyingi, so as always, social media, conversations zikaanza kuja kwamba, and then most cases, kwanza takwimu zikaonyesha wanaume walikuwa wengi zaidi kwenye hizo cases zilikuwa zinatokea, and then conversation kwenye social media zikaanza kuwa around mental health na wanaume na uwezo wa kucommunicate, jamii iko tayari kumsikiliza mwanaume anaye communicate, je mwanaume ana communicate vipi na nini na vitu kama hivyo. So we figured, okay, the moment we are back, na tukaanza kuaddress na tukaanza kuzungumzia na tukaanza kufanya tena men the podcast, it's only right we start with that, because that's the core of what we are trying to do here as the podcast. Nazungumzia swala zima la mental health. So maybe kwa kuanzia, and I would love to get both of you your opinion as well, is it true concept nzima ya kwamba jamii haiko tayari kumpokea mwanaume ambaye anaweza kucommunicate hisia zake? Kama one of the things about tunasikia ni kwamba tunasema we don't think the society iko tayari kumpokea mwanaume ambaye anaweza kuelezea hisia zake. Is that true from your opinion? You live in this society, we see things, what do you feel? I can start with you, Justice, and then you want to do the ladies first thing?
No, we said she's a bro, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's okay. So I'll start.
Yeah.
No, so kwanza mimi ningejiuliza tunaposema jamii haiko tayari kumpokea mwanaume anaye communicate hisia, jamii yenyewe ni nani? So I would say kuna historia kubwa sana ya sisi wanaume tumetengeneza mfumo ambao unatufavor sisi mwenyewe. I think kitu ambacho tulisahau katika hilo ni kwamba the higher a monkey climbs up on a tree, the more exposed the tail, to put it in kind of polite terms, the tail is exposed. So system ambayo tumetengeneza yenyewe ndio ina relegate emotions to the secondary place, to insignificance basically, kwamba hakuna nafasi ya emotion. So we are rational beings, tuna communicate based on logic, based on facts. So at the end of the day, that system ends up hurting sisi sisi wenyewe. I think there's room for individual men kujitoa kwenye hiyo system rather than blaming it on society. Yeah, so I think the system we're going to make create sisi.
And now we are paying for it.
Yes, we are.
Then you have a different take on that one.
I concur. I agree. Kwa sababu pia ukiongelea society, who makes up the society? Kwa sababu mimi nikikaa nikasema leo mimi siwezi nikaongea, siwezi kupaza sauti yangu, ninajinyamazisha mwenyewe, you know. So sijui hata kama kuna mtu anaweza akanisikiliza au akanisupport, kwa sababu tayari nimeshajiambia, nimeweka hii perception, muonekano kwamba hamna mtu atanisikiliza, and so I don't even try. Yeah, lakini you'd be surprised kwamba unaweza ukaongea, ni kujua platform, kwa sababu pia as rational beings, sisi sio wanyama. Tunajua kuassess, we use logic, we can see, we can evaluate wapi naweza nikaongea freely, wapi bado itachukua muda mpaka these people soften up. Yeah, so using that knowledge kuangalia, okay, mimi kuna watu gani ambao naweza nikaongea nao kuhusu vitu hivi na watu ambao siwezi kuongea nao. Lakini at the end of the day we make up society. Yeah, so leo nikiamua kujibadilisha mimi, ninaweza kumpa mtu wa pili pale pembeni yangu aone kwamba okay, it's possible, na yeye akafunguka. Na mwingine akafunguka. And next thing we know tumeshabadilisha society from one person.
So bring me back to my next question now. Do men know how to communicate? As now tusijitoe mmoja mmoja, because tukienda kujitoa mmoja mmoja kila mmoja anasema I'm sorry. Lakini let's tuzungumzie wengi na katika mazingira ambayo tunaokaa. Do we feel like we as men know how to communicate properly?
No, and I think a resounding no. Kwa sababu the way I look at it, naona kama our style of communication is very one dimensional. Like I said earlier, kama Nadia anasema hapa, tunajua sana communicate kuhusu, you know, facts, logic. We pretend to be rational, to ignore emotional side. So we can communicate very well when it comes to things that require us to use our reasoning.
Yes.
Lakini where our emotions are involved, we do terribly in that area. Kwa sababu one of our primary drivers for communicating is actually protecting our position of power, kwa sababu historically tumekuwa na sehemu kubwa zaidi katika society ambayo tumejiweka sisi wenyewe. By the way, so I could call it a tyrannical you know, sort of kind of power.
Dictator
kabisa. Yes, ni dictator mkubwa kabisa. Ya sasa inatupa shida in terms of now tunakuwa challenged now kwa sababu gender roles na shift zinabadilika. Inabidi na sisi tujifunze ku communicate emotionally, ku communicate our emotions, our feelings, our fears, and that's something that we are not inclined to do. Yeah.
And it's funny that I think one of the things that a lot of people wanna relate na wanaume, or one thing wanasema wanaume can easily communicate is anger. You know, if kama kuna kitu ambacho sisi kama wanaume tunaweza tukakuwasilisha kwa urahisi zaidi ni hasira. You know, everybody can tell when you're angry, you know?
Yeah.
And then you feel like, I don't know, but and maybe sometimes we can take it back kuzungumzia kuhusiana society tulivyo, kwa sababu you go back a lot of time ukikana watu wazima na kuambia mwanaume utaki kuwa unaongea, mwanaume utaki kuwa unacheka, mwanaume utaki kuwa hivi, you know, keep calm, wewe, lakini ukikasirika watu lazima wajue. Na mpaka leo hii kuna watu wanakuambia tu ukiwa kama baba nyumbani, huwezi kuwa unacheka kila siku, yani mara moja wanasema lazima uonyeshe kama baba yupo. In my mind I'm like, so the only way kuonyesha kama baba yupo is it kuonyesha mimi na hasira, kwa mimi kupandisha sauti, kwa mimi kufanya nini? And little do we know, or little, yani kwa kutokufikiria kwa undani, we are also building another society ambayo inaenda kuwa hivyo especially for kids, because wanachoona ndio ambacho wanaenda kufanya. You know, so it has been there for ages kwa kwenda and sometimes I'm like, are we ever going to be able to unpack this?
Yeah. And that's actually, we're building our I don't want to say this, it's a pessimistic outlook, but kwa sababu tunaongea kitu kimoja afu tunafanya kingine. So unaona mtu anaongea, okay, yeah, now it's, you know, wote inabidi tuje express, tuongee, lakini actions tofauti. So now mtoto anakuwa anasikia kitu messaging fulani alafu but anaona action tofauti. So in this child's head obviously atafata actions, they will do what they see is done. Lakini kwenye akili like logically what they've encoded is don't do this. But that is what they're being driven to do. So now there's dissonance. Kwenye kichwa vinagongana. Actions zao na what they're telling themselves in their head and what they've heard are two different things. That makes it even worse. Bora hata useme mwanaume ni kazi yake, yani the only emotion is anger and they see anger is displayed. So hapo at least, and I'm not saying that's not the ideal.
Yeah.
That's not the ideal. But at least then we're not affecting our own mental health. Because when we have dissonance kwenye kichwa chetu, dissonance meaning what I'm thinking and what I'm doing are not matching.
Yeah.
Then that affects my mental health, my well-being, kwa sababu najiona kwamba okay, am I a fraud? Maana nasema hichi nafikiria hichi lakini nafanya hivi. And now naanza kuwa mwenye internal turmoil kabla hata external world hawajani attack, kwa sababu let's face it, siku ya leo, like if you do something that the society does not agree with, whether logically, mostly logically, kwa sababu unaona unaweza kumkuta mtu anafanya hivyo kwa ambavyo anapovi condemn. So logically watakuwa attack. Now umeshaanza kujiattack mwenyewe kwamba what the hell is happening, and then unapata externally. That really puts us in a bad mental when it comes to our mental health, it puts us in a bad state.
Yeah, let me also jump in kidogo hapo. Unavyosema kwamba tunaweza kuexpress anger. So I think nilikuwa namaanisha hivyo nikisema kwamba sisi tuko very one dimensional kwenye our communication. It's sort of ni kama watoto wachanga ama wanyama. You know, akiwa ana express furaha kilio, akiwa anataka maziwa kilio. It's like language inatusaidia sana kwa sababu there's a whole bunch of words that you can use to express what you're feeling. Of course mimi nadhani hisia za mwanadamu, hisia moyo wa mwanadamu ni kama kisima ambacho ni bottomless. It's a bottomless pit. If you access it, there's no end. You know, you can go on and on and on and on kwa sababu ni emotions za mwanadamu. Lakini kwa sababu sisi tumejiwekea hiyo limitation, now tunakuwa bound in terms of how we express a wide range of emotions. Kwa sababu ya careful kwamba niki-express namna ile itanionyesha kama weak. But anger isn't really seen as weakness. It's not frowned upon, and that's I think one thing that that needs to change.
Have we praised anger so much kiasi kwamba imekuwa normalized to the extent kwamba we don't even feel bad about it? Because in reality, I mean, how I look at it, and this has come from reading and seeing things na kuongea na Nadia for a while now, you know, I've come to realize that sometimes I mean, it's okay to feel angry, but then how you choose to express it is a whole different thing. You know? But I think we have chosen a certain way, and it goes back to vitu kama, this is why we have vitu kama gender-based violence na vitu kama hivyo, kwa sababu tumeipraise sana swala zima la kunanili ya kuonyesha hasira ambayo kwa wanaume wengi like this is why we have societies about it's okay pige kwanza mwanamke kidogo ili ashtuke ajue kwamba unampenda. It is what it is.
Yeah. So, you know? Take what's happened with Will Smith. Ukiangalia like the conversations, utaona like some comments, ndio there are people who are like, no, that's not really, you shouldn't do that. There's no justification. Hata kama leo mtu amemtukana mke wako mbele yako, you know, you don't use violence. There are so many ways we can deal with that. There's so many ways we can put that person in their place ili baadaye asirudie, you know. But in his defense, most people wanasema no, but he was defending his woman, his wife, you know, like also what Chris Rock did was just not, you do not joke on someone's health. That's just wrong, right? Lakini Will Smith's reaction, he really, as you said, it's like a tip of the iceberg. He just needed one more push pop, you know, and I think he has been angry maybe. And that was the day that was just the last straw. So, but ukiangalia in social media na watu, yeah, my man should protect me like that. So these are reinforcements, right? Huyu mke wako,
a man should protect his family.
Lazima, you have to stand up for me kwa sababu, so violence and using this one-dimensional way of expressing emotion, because I'm sure that he was hurt that you're making fun of my wife. It wasn't just anger. Anger a lot of the time is a surface emotion. There's usually a deeper, more vulnerable emotion underneath it. Yeah, so it can be primary, lakini muda mwingi ukichunguza dig deep,
that was definitely shame.
Yeah,
shame.
It was shame.
Yeah.
You know, it was other stuff underneath it. But anger, as you said, it's, you know, it's one, I know how to deal with this, I've seen how it's done, and that's the approach. Alafu sasa tukija sasa the rest of our society tunasema yeah, that's how you should be, tuna reinforce, unamwambia mtu kwamba what you did was good, so next time you do it again.
But also another thing about it, not in the same context, but also he's a boy from Philly projects, it's from the hood, growing up, that's how you put people in their places, you know. It's the same, look at it this way, it's the same as, for instance, nimekulia katika mazingira ambayo I've had to fight kwa kila kitu ambacho nilichonacho, and sometimes physically fight. You get it? Pigana na, okay, with siblings inawezekana kidogo a little bit different, kwa kuna muda ambao mnaweza mkaacha kupigana, lakini nje unapigana. Shule umefika form 1 unaonewa, you're like no, nimeenda boarding, mtaki kunielewa mimi form 1, kwa hiyo we fight. Nafika form 2 adolescence na ballet, ujuaji wa kila kitu una fight. Form 4 umesoma katika shule ambayo is all about violence, na tunaona tumbe stories zao nakwambia mpaka form 4 kupigana na walimu, umeenda chuo. So all your life umekuwa condition kujua kwamba this is the only way ambao mimi naweza nika express.
Na inakuwa rewarded kwa sababu you feel better, watu wanakuheshimu zaidi, your peers look up to you, hamna mtu anakuchezea. You know, so all of these are rewards ambazo zina reinforce.
Like Michael, that's his early life, you know, after being exposed to so much money and fame.
Yes.
And to get to where he was, or he is, you know, he's still nishamshusha tayari.
This guy just cancelled Will Smith.
So to get to where he is, he had to conduct himself at the highest professional level. You can't tell me kwamba eti kwa sababu you grew up in Philly, kwa sababu of your background, your childhood, you've conducted yourself professionally for 30 years. You know, since umetoka kwenye limelight, and then this one single event ifanye uharibu, you know, a reputation ambayo umeijenga kwa miaka 30. I don't really,
it's not an excuse.
Yes, I think something happened, lakini, you know, baada ya his early years.
So which brings me back to something about nataka situzungumze now. As men then, how do we learn to communicate better? How? Because like you say, Nadia, kuna very big contradiction. So if you look, so for instance, you look in relationships, and I'm talking about, like say marriage or you know that kind of relationship. Mtu anakuambia no, you should protect your wife, you know, against any harm that in vitu kama hivyo.
And it's not just in marriages.
Yeah.
But, you know.
You know, generally, as a father, you should protect your, you know, protect your wife and kids na vitu kama hivyo. And sometimes tuna equate protection kwenye vitu kama, kwa sababu then again, and you look at kama wanaume ambao tunaambiwa kwamba you protect, you provide, you preside. You know? So basically those are the things ambavyo jamii inatuambia. And all of a sudden anaingia Michael Baruti na podcast yake, men is like no, you don't do that, there's more of this ukafanya, kunaisha mental. So as a man I'm like, how do I communicate now? How do I unlearn that, and how do I start to express myself and my emotions better? How?
First by acknowledging that I need to. Kwa sababu hamna kitu chochote kitatokea if unaona hamna tatizo lolote in how I communicate. So that's the start. Huwezi ukabadilisha mtu ambaye haoni any value or any, there's nothing that needs to be changed.
Yeah.
Hiyo ndo changamoto.
I think I'll strongly agree with that as well. Mimi nadhani value moja kubwa sana ambayo inasaidia kuwa nayo katika maisha, especially as a kwa wote, lakini as a man kwa sababu ya background tulipotokea, ni reflexivity, you know, ule uwezo wa kukaa kujiuliza maswali kuhusu, you know, kwa nini niko nilivyo, kwa nini najisikia hivi, you know, motive zangu ni nini, especially that swala la motive, kwa sababu tumezaliwa kwenye background ambayo we are conditioned to take for granted a lot of things that have to do with, you know, weakness and emotions and whatnot.
Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, kwamba so kwenye level ya household, right? Tunajua kwamba the semi-feminist movement ime kamata momentum just a few years ago, you know, barely 50 years ago. Tena kwa country like Tanzania, we grew up in an environment where a lot of women did not go to school. So in terms of the power dynamics za familia, already you know kuna tatizo hapo kwa sababu the man ana enjoy privilege kubwa sana na yeye ana pass on to, you know, the kids. So you're growing up knowing kwamba mimi sitaki kuingia jikoni, sisemi kwamba eti mimi napika kwa sababu najaribu kuchallenge hii notion. Lakini even I grew up kwenye mazingira ambayo, you know, the kitchen is not for me, you know. I go to school and actually I was lucky kwa sababu nilikuwa naenda shule kwenye darasa moja na my sister, lakini her work burden at the household level haikuwa sawa sawa na kwangu. I literally didn't have to do any work kama kusafisha, you know, kusafisha vyombo and stuff like that, but she had a massive burden to take care of and responsibilities ambazo mimi sina, mimi nacheza tu. So already that now conditions me into thinking that, you know, as a man sitakiwi kufanya certain roles na nini na, you know, ambazo zinakuwa bad. So now you being conditioned to think, to feel like that, na kama una take for granted, hauna reflexivity, utaendelea kuiperpetuate katika maisha yako, you know, na utakuwa unashangaa tu, why is this being challenged wakati this is how things should be, basically. And, you know, so with dunia inabadilika sana, you know, and but mbaya sana kwetu ni kwamba if feminist movement inavyozidi kuongezeka ni kwamba they're chipping away at our power. Wao wanajiongezea wao wenyewe. Na dunia inabadilika, unajua how notice, you know. Hata in terms of rotation tu ya dunia hivi. Sio like tuna notice kwamba okay, dunia ina rotate, you don't notice it moving.
Unajua tu mchana,
unajua mchana usiku una notice majira yanavyobadilika, lakini you know you're not actively seeing it change. So inatokea hivyo pia katika hii realm ya you know, maisha ya mwanaume. Maisha yanabadilika sana, kusema kama hujachukua muda kukaa kusema okay, how do I now begin to conduct myself differently ili niweze kumatch dunia inavyoenda hivi sasa, you know, kwa sababu in 10-20 years, I mean, who knows, you know, your daughter atakuwa kwenye mazingira tofauti kabisa na ambayo my sister
you talked a little bit about
reflexivity. Yes,
reflexivity. Can it is the same as introspection?
Almost, but I think reflexivity goes a few miles mbele hapo, kwa sababu I think unavyo introspect unaweza kuwa unaangalia zaidi you know, your internal whatever forces, but kuwa reflexive ni kuwa conscious of your environment as a whole, you know. So ujiangalie tu mwenyewe, lakini unaangalia actually kwenye case ya Will Smith ambayo tuna discuss, I think angekuwa reflexive, much as you're justified in taking an action, lazima kuna factors nyingine ungeziconsider, kama nilivyosema your career, yani that very
Will Smith, that alone is a big enough reason.
Exactly. Message you're sending.
Exactly. How that will affect you. Na sio hivyo tu, in fact reflexivity ingempelekea kufikiria hata what would that mean now to Chris Rock? You know, I think nobody's talking about that, but you know, you've smacked man, you know, mbele ya watu, this is a grown man and our watoto, you know.
In the matter of like, you don't do that to me. In the matter of like, lazima tugawane aibu pale. And then I'm like, pale lazima tugawane aibu.
Tugawane aibu.
Hamna heshima. Without having, hamna heshima tena. I'm like, kwa hamna heshima, basi tugawane aibu. You know? Wow. And then I'm going to ask a question, maybe a little bit personal. So if not, just say, stop, Michael, don't ask, I don't get it to talk. I hope utajibu. So, have you ever been in a position ambayo, because you talk, I like what you talk about, reflect, you know, I like what you talk. Have you ever had time to, I mean, growing up, have you ever had to actually do that? Out to subconsciously, for you were aware of the environment, time ambazo zinabadilika na nini na vitu kama hivyo. So because of that, you were like, you know, as a man, I have to do better. Or you got some life lessons ambazo zikafanya yourself like, hey. And then they had to humble you down.
No, nobody corrects. I don't think that's being humbled down. Sidhani necessarily kama mkichukua hiyo route ni kwamba umechukua route ya humility. So I plainly think it's just doing the right thing.
It is.
You know, kwa sababu I don't think this idea ya kwamba kuna bidi kuwe na, you know, equality, kwamba other human beings matter. I don't think it's taught in a classroom setting. So definitely, now I would say hakuna mtu ambaye amezaliwa na hiyo reflexivity. Hakuna. Tena especially kwetu sisi, it's easier to actually be the opposite. Kuendelea ku perpetuate zile you know stigma nini ambazo umezikuta, the systems, structures ambazo zina
because it's so easier that way.
benefit mimi, then why would I challenge those things? But definitely I think as you grow up now, your view of life inaanza kubadilika, ina change. Of course inatokana na experiences, some very good, some terrible, horrible, zinakufundisha kwamba to actually live this world and live responsibly, you need to change the way you think about some things. Yeah, it's not you know, life is yes, it is a constant struggle for power, lakini what are you doing with that power?
Wow. With great power
comes great responsibility. Yeah.
Shout out to Auntie May for that. So I want us to dive a little bit of we talked about kwa issue tunazungumzia hapa zaidi ni communication na kwa nini we as men need to do better, we need to improve na vitu kama hivyo. So if you go back to Nadia, talk about communication and mental health.
So one thing I think kwa sasa hivi, a lot of us communicate, we just don't communicate the right things sometimes. Yeah, so there are things when it comes to the art of communication, we have the skill set, we have the abilities to communicate. Na wengi wetu tuna communicate, lakini what the content of our communication, that is where the problem lies. Na kwa nini? Ni kwa sababu wengi wetu sasa hivi we listen less and we talk more. Ndio maana changamoto zinakuja. Yaani sitaki kusikia point yako, sitaki kuelewa Michael unachokisema wewe unamaanisha nini, au kimetokea wapi. I'm just trying to tell you what's in my mind, wewe unielewe mimi. Sasa tukikaa tutaki kuelewana, changamoto zinaanza kwa sababu one, now there's interpersonal conflict, which is when we talk about mental health issues, interpersonal issues can affect our mental health and well-being. And then they will come, why is he not listening to me? What is my problem? So now kuna internal conflict and turmoil that's going on, which also affects our mental health. Also, socially, our social aspect is extremely important to us. So kama mimi naona kwenye jamii watu wanisikilizi au point yangu haichukuliwi, then najiona siko part of this community, which then affects also my mental health. So ukiangalia the whole cycle affects us. Lakini when we tease, tunaona the biggest issue ni kwamba wote hatusikilizani. Hatusikilizi. And sio kusikia na usikiliza ni vitu tofauti. Kusikia is wewe una uwezo, you have the mechanism ya pick up sound. Right? But kusikiliza is the sound you've heard. What are the meanings? What have you extracted? Umeelewa nini? Do you seek to understand more? Nadia akisema nimechoka leo, unamaanisha nini umechoka leo? Like what's been happening for you today? Unaweza kumwambia mtu nimechoka, lakini umetoka kuamka sasa hivi, una tatizo gani? Umemwelezea ama stress huko, hujajaribu kumuelewa. Which one, we are contributing to each other's mental illnesses or mental health problems.
Yeah.
Do you get I mean, you do this thing for a living, so do you get to meet watu ambao one of the traumas ambazo zimesababishwa, I mean, moja sababu za wao kuwa na trauma is just because they cannot communicate, as in the case kwamba either they feel like whatever they say wanakuwa misunderstood, or they cannot just articulate their thoughts and their feelings.
They're not listened to. So the biggest thing as therapists we do is listen. So hata ukija hapa na kuuliza, okay, so what brings you today? I don't know. I listen to, what does that I don't know mean? And I check, are you feeling nervous? Yes. Nimemuelewa. I don't know. Umesema I don't know, lakini mimi nimeelewa. Kuna kitu behind that. And you try and unpack. ndo mtu anahisi okay ninasikilizwa, yani you see me. Na ukiangalia a lot of the suicide rates is people communicate their struggles, wanaongea. It's just that they don't say mimi natakujiua to your face. Wengine wanasema yani life is so dull these days. That is them telling you ninachoka.
Yes.
Anakaa na unamuuliza okay so what are your plans? I don't see anything. That is them communicating I am suicidal. But kwa sababu we don't listen, we do not probe, we do not get to find out, we do not get to help.
With what Nadia said, Justice, do you feel like then we best communicate, we don't communicate at all?
No, kwanza ngoja ni kwa sababu ndio communication is both speaking, expressing, it's outward, but it's also kusikia. And I feel like I strongly agree with her kwamba perhaps one of the things that we struggle with the most ni listening. And then now that is being challenged. I think umeanza kuongelea social media hapo. Utagundua kwamba now I think so with social media now, with the affordances that kila mtu anazo na social media, people can express themselves and women are talking, compared to zamani, whereas kwa mfano issues za sexual health ya mwanaume na sexual moral fitness, stamina, vitu kama hivyo vinakuja kwenye public now, and men are quite offended by that, because
we do get offended honestly. No, kuna siku somebody alisema wanaume mfue boxer zetu. It's a good thing kusema kwamba guys for any boxer like chaos yet to care after that. My God, men are offended. So I agree.
So I think at the end of the day, so we get weighed down na kitendo cha kwamba tumezoea kwanza hatuna any feedback loops. Now we have an oversupply of feedback and we don't know what to do with it. Tunafanya nini? So it's very easy kujiona inadequate ukisikiliza. If kama uko on social media, actually ndio maana watu wengine wanaondoka social media for their mental health, kwa sababu ukikaa ukisikiliza, if you're paying attention, there's quite a lot of feedback ambayo hauitaki. Well, it's useful, but if you're not ready to handle, if you can't handle the heat, stay out of the kitchen.
And there's so much.
So
human
much
beings, there's just so much information we can hold.
Yes.
In a moment. Sasa unakuwa bombarded with so much that inaweza.
So before we get to the miscommunication and whatever, I like what you say about kuambiwa usichopenda kukisikia, because sometimes that's how you grow, sometimes I mean ofisini unapewa feedback kwamba Michael umezingua, we expected better, or you do whatever, unapeleka report yako mtu anakuambia I'm not happy with it, what do? You go back unaangalia to prove that it's no. Lakini I think inapokuja kwenye kwa mfano, you took an example like, so if labda nikitukulia mfano kama Michael Baruti, you do this work, labda unaishi hapa, una kazi yako hii, you do the podcast, nini, and then leo hii tunakaa mtaweza kuambia no, I don't think you're good enough. I don't think kuna hiki na hiki. You get offended.
Yeah, very much so.
You really do get offended. Now what I do after that is a whole other thing. Naweza kuona mshikaji vya usual, nikachana, naweza nikachukua nikampiga na chupa. It can go both ways. We've seen fights like book a bar mekam na kunya, and then fights they book out of nowhere. Ukiuliza sababu you're like labda tumezidisha change, mhudumu katuibia change. Mmekunywa bia za 30 change ilizidisha shilingi 2000. Inaibua ngombe ambao baadaye watu akiwa sober you're like what was that about? So I want to go back to point you ulisema kwamba sometimes kuambiwa usijitaka kuambiwa kutokana na information iliyopo, na vile tunaishi katika different time about people speak out now. Nowadays people speak, especially women na hata watoto. Yani hata watoto they speak. I get call of my daughter like every day. She calls me out like mzee vipi. People speak out. And I feel like if we as men hatutajust na kukubaliana na hicho kitu, it's gonna get worse. So how do we get there? This is for both of you.
And that's a challenge to all of us.
Even I need to skiliza.
We have to choose how we communicate, kwa sababu sawa wote tuna haki ya kuongea ukweli wetu na kitu chochote kilichokuwa kwenye nafsi zetu au akili zetu au whatever, lakini you're not talking to yourself, unaongea na binadamu wengine walikuwa na perspectives zao tofauti na za kwako. Huwezi ukaenda, let's say, and this is like overly simplified, I can use religion because that's like, we know it's very simple. Huwezi ukaingia msikitini ukasema nyinyi mnachokiabudu ni kosa. You're disrespecting another human being na faith yake, for example. Yeah, and that's a very, I think it's a simple example that we know in our societies hold very strong naniliu beliefs. That's the same with human beings. Me na beliefs zangu unakuja unani challenge tu hivi, yani roughly in my face without any empathy, kweli lazima tutagombana. Wewe utadefend ya kwako na mimi nitadefend point yangu.
Yeah.
And mwisho wa siku wewe utonisikia mimi sitokusikia.
Yeah. Because
of the approach you chose. Lakini ukiingia with wanting to understand, let's say nimeona Michael unaishi hivi, mtoto wako unamwachia hiyo ndoto tu anakuja kufokea wewe. Mimi naona this is unacceptable. So nikaja nikwambia Michael,
ujikule mtu.
Wewe sio mwanaume, ujikule mtoto wako. Excuse me, umemzaa. You know what I mean? Lakini ukija na hisi ukataka kuelewa mbona how come your daughter speaks to you like this?
What are
your dynamics? Then you share your point. Wewe huwezi tu kumfuata mtu ukampa advice zako kama zote utake hata kumuelewa. You know? Yeah. So we need to know how to choose the way we give feedback or give advice or give comments or how we communicate with others.
But when we communicate as men, what do we seek?
Kwangu mimi nadhani ni swala rahisi sana kwa sababu
go on.
Yes, I think we're driven by this need to be in control, and so actually the way I think about it ni kama you are a football fan, so you understand the sport, Nadia. You're a bro.
She's a bro.
Yeah. So kuna offense na kuna defense. You know, anything that happens in between it's either contributing to the offense or the defense. So you communicate offense, manake una seek control, unajaribu ku-establish, ku-assert your dominance, your power. I think these are the struggles that we see now on social media, because you cannot be irrelevant as a man. You have to be, lazima mimi nijulikane, mimi nipo. I'm here, nipo. Tunapigania hicho. And then kuna the defensive now side, kwa sababu mtu mwingine labda anajaribu ku-assert their control, so you have to have a defense mechanism. Reaction here, Will Smith, you know, my wife's
keep my words near
yes. So I think those are two primary motives for us. They center around kubakiza nafasi yetu kama miamba, wababe, you know, men.
Yeah, I've never really looked at it that way. I've never really looked at it that way. So, that was a light bulb moment for me.
Think about it, kwa sababu kwenye case ya Will Smith, hakukuwa na, it was so fast. Yes, I think reaction ya Jada ilionyesha kidogo kama maybe ya kupenda.
And a lot of people didn't get the joke at first. They did not understand Jada's reaction. Paka baadaye when they started to read, you're like, oh wow. Okay,
yes. So within huo muda, it's not like I negotiate na Jada kwamba, are you happy with this? No, I'm not happy. Okay, now I'm standing up. Naenda kwake it was just a knee-jerk reaction. Akaamua tu kwamba huyu yuko offended na hii comment where maybe angemsikiza ngambia just tulia and stuff like that. So it was a defense mechanism, sababu okay, umeattack my family, sio wewe ulikuwa attack ni Jada, but she's not your possession really. She is your partner. Kulikuwa na nafasi labda ya kumsikiliza, nataka ufanyaje kuhusu this utani ambao umekuwa thrown away. No, hakuna chance ya kufanya hivyo.
So I like the narrative of your football combo with your friend or your friend. And I think for so how do you strike the balance? Do you bring the midfields now? Because katika narrative ya soka, in this year we have the midfields and substitution combatant. Au tunatoa timu uwanjani kwa jamani, tuna concede defeat. kitu ambacho hatutakangi.
But it happens. Kwani mnacheza masaa yote? Si kuna kuanga na ni whatever.
Yeah.
That is reflection. Tuna reflect uwanjani jamani tumefanya nini? Or we attacked more, did we have to defend more? What was happening?
Yeah. The only challenge I see with that is that I don't think a lot of us actually get to do that. That's the only thing I see. Kwa sababu anything that involves kukaa kujitafakari na kufikiria is not something we want to do. Kwa sababu naweza ndio kweli toxic.
And then what do you do about it?
Maybe kama Mike I say I'm too toxic. That's not something that I want to hear. It takes a lot. It takes, I would say it takes super strength or superhuman kuweza kusema kwamba ni okay guys, you know, I need to do better, I need to improve kwenye hiki, I need to improve kwenye hiki na nini kama hiki. Na ndio maana mwanzo nikauliza kwamba ni as men when we communicate what do we say, ambacho Justice amejibu vizuri sana. Kuna only two options here. You know, either we want to offend or we want to defend. Hakuna in between.
Hakuna really. Well, yes, I think actually lengo ni inabidi iwe neutral. Communication yetu yote haipaswi kufanya either ku assert dominance or ku defend sana. It should be neutral. Really, it's very difficult to get there. But I think siku hizi kuna vitu ambavyo ni fundamental ambavyo unagundua kwamba mtu inabidi awe navyo. Maybe zamani tungedhani mtu alitakiwa ajifunze profession yake na profession yake master vizuri na nini, aujui kwamba vitu kama critical thinking, you know, these high order skills zinachangia sana kumsaidia mtu kuweza kushape mentality yake towards some of those things. So it has to be a conscious effort to say I do no harm basically, you know. So sitaki communicate in a way that hurts, inflicts pain on another person, lakini pia antajaribu create mazingira ambayo that is not done to me as well. So now it's tricky because it depends on other people.
But so you're a father and I know you're a son. Yeah. So how are you unachukua hayo mawazo and then unayashusha vipi for your little man?
Well,
how old is he now?
It's a lifelong process. He's 6, turning 7 in September. But kusema kweli, there's so much that I learned from upbringing yangu mimi mwenyewe, and especially nikiangalia values ambazo my dad tried to impart on us. Kwa mfano, so very weird thing about me, let me say, this is a public platform. Lakini wacha tu niseme, regardless, I will give someone a tip, but I'll say asante, you know, on top of it. I do that. I do someone a favor, and say asante, you know. So he was a disciplinarian in a way, and anapenda sana mambo ya language. Kwa hiyo you couldn't say he said like vitu kama kusema haya kafanya hiki na hiki, haya sema no, that's not proper language. You're supposed to say sawa. Wow. You know, so ina kutrain kidogo kujaribu kuelewa you know, values, how you conduct yourself mbele ya watu. Of course kuna influences nyingi sana ambazo zimeingia katikati katika maisha yangu, lakini even with my son kidogo najaribu kumjengea some of those kwa mfano now the word asante is, you know, he says it. Actually leo tu so because he's fallen a bit sick and a bacterial infection, so tapika, you know, kabla mimi sijaondoka kwenda kwenye mambo mengine. So he vomited and then he came back. I was calling him when, you know, he was saying ana tumbo inamuuma kidogo. So akatoka akaenda akasema nenda kuvomit, akaenda akavomit, karudi, mambo mengine akaendelea sana. Mimi nimeshika vitu vingine. And then baada ya muda akaenda kwa mama yake akamwambia baba didn't say sorry. Wow. Yeah. so I had to apologize. Yeah, kabini I apologize, nimwambie sorry. Lakini that's something that we have slowly, we're trying to build
growing up. Zako shakwambia sorry.
It was never. You never hear that.
I remember this one day tulikuwa tunafanya homework na Jan. So Jan is my firstborn. Tulifanya naye homework and then mimi nikamwambia kitu, mwalimu wake alikuwa amemfundisha opposite. Na tunajua watoto na walimu wao wanasikiza yeye walimu kuliko wazazi wao inapokuja swala homework. So mimi nikajifundisha kitu and then mimi nikagundua I was wrong. So I was like, you know what, mimi ndo nimekosea. and then hapo katikati tulikuwa tumevutana kweli kweli. So nilivyondoka because see daddy I told you were wrong. I told you. So I was like okay, I am sorry, I was wrong. Mtu mmoja alikuwa anapita nyuma yangu what are you saying sorry to a 5-year-old 4-year-old? What is wrong with it? And I'm like, but this is how we unpack and try to change the narrative, you know. We grew up katika kipindi ambacho it doesn't matter mzazi anakuambia nini, lakini mzazi concept kama mzazi akosei.
They are always right.
Yani mzazi akosei, mzazi is always right. So you mtoto kwenda, it's one thing to say, but for him to be bold enough to say no, why didn't you say it?
Yeah.
That's huge, man. You're on the right track, my guy. When you're parenting, you're seriously on the right track.
Trying. It's one of many things to consider.
Yeah.
It's not.
And you have to be conscious about it.
You have to. You must.
Yeah.
You can.
Kuna watu kwa autopilot.
And that's how we end up producing adults who, you know,
cannot
communicate.
Yeah.
And when we speak about communicating, kwa sababu tukiongelea mambo ya suicide or mental health, we are boiling down to emotional health. Yeah, unless someone develops a psychotic disorder or something that is linked to genetics and had a trigger of sorts. But lakini ukiangalia mental well-being, a lot of us struggle with our mental health. Not kwamba tuna mental illness, ila it's just we're not navigating through our emotions, because that's the one thing the society, the world, schools don't teach us. Kama hivi ku apologize, that's you're teaching them that your feelings matter. Mtu like if they hurt your feelings or they make you feel a certain way, you should communicate, because that's how you heal that feeling. So like I'm hurt, my father hajaniambia pole. And nimwambia I'm feeling ill, right? So angeiweka ndani ingeanza kuumla, babangu hanipendi, hanijali, hanioni. You know? But the fact that I'm communicating, that didn't say sorry, imemuumiza ndio maana akasema hivyo.
Yeah.
And the minute that happens, you teach them that it's okay. You feel hurt, that's okay. It's normal. We're humans.
Yeah.
We have emotions, a big range of them. And it's okay to express it. It's okay for others to acknowledge it. And that's how the emotion inaondoka.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to stay with dad, didn't say sorry. Dad already said sorry. He goes on with his day. Doesn't sit with it, haimkandamizi. You know? Just like with your daughter. She was there telling you she's frustrated. Probably what is wrong?
Hey, bro, I was like, my bad, I was wrong.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Good thing she didn't say I told you so. Pale kidogo tu
Angeniumisha kidogo.
Like she was smart enough kujua like zake atakika kuvuta. Watoto wa siku hizi bwana hatari tu.
Yeah, and that's, I think cha muhimu sasa hivi tukifikiria like as parents, as families, you know, especially if we're thinking of nurturing the future generation, for us we have the obligation and duty to reflect, introspect and reflect, because go inwards ujifahamu and then angalia now your surrounding and try to understand and consolidate the two for harmony, kwa sababu hauishi duniani peke yako. But when it comes to the next generation, we need to start thinking of how do we allow children to express emotions in a healthy manner. Kwa sababu suicide is
especially, I feel like especially for boys. Especially for boys. Yes. I feel like for a lot of girls growing up, they have room, you know, relationship with a lot of girls, not their mothers, their aunties. And I'm looking at context of Tanzania. Their mothers, their aunties, so there's all that. But for men, it's different. You know, I have people ambao wamekuwa baba kaambia kaa hapa soma gazeti. Whether you want it or you don't. Unakaa pale unasoma gazeti, ukimaliza pale tena kwambia unaenda wapi. You know, so huyo mtu, how do you expect that person now aweze kuja kuwa anaweza communicate vizuri? You know, you have people ambao wamekuwa baba akija akisikia umefanya kosa akiambiwa no time ya kulikoza ni bakora tu. Yaani sasa shukuru Mungu kupiga bako kuna wengine. We have story about mtu anakuambia ameshika ametundikwa kwenye mti kichwa chini miguu juu. Mzee akachukua mkanda akaanza kutani. We have those cases, you know? And then now how do you expect him to kama huyo akiwa mkubwa now aweze kukaa? Of course najua penaweza kaza ulobisho wa Twitter siku zote tunachapa watoto au tuchapi. Lakini the point is, how do you expect that person now akiwa mkubwa aweze kuji express na communicate vizuri?
Yeah. And it goes back also to this aggression is acceptable in men. It's an acceptable emotion. Because ukiangalia the gender norms, mwanamke express anger is very unladylike.
Oh yeah.
So it's not okay for women to express anger or pride, all of the confidence. Mwanamke, you must be humble. Lakini those same emotions for a man, anger, pride, confidence, are celebrated. So ukiangalia hata our illnesses, when we come to our mental health, wanawake wengi, depression wengi, kwa sababu now perhaps they're angry at their spouse, family, or someone. You know, they have this they're not allowed to project that they are capable or they're confident in themselves or their pride, any of that. Inakuwa internalized. Yeah, and because for them sadness, these emotions are acceptable, that is where they end up. So depression is excessive sadness. Sasa kama mtu, I cannot be confident and prideful, and that is me being true to myself. I can't be true to myself. I can be sad. And that is acceptable. Wataniona, they will accept me. Compared to if I'm prideful and confident, they will reject me. So unaona, women, ukiangalia a lot of the statistics, a lot of the mental health struggles women go through are in line with the emotions they are allowed or not allowed to experience. And for men, why is suicide so high in men? It's acceptable for a man to project aggression, anger, violence. So when it comes to being suicidal, there's excessive sadness, anaumia, there's pain, but they're not able to communicate. The only thing they're able to express is aggression, violence, so they express it inward towards. Suicide is just excessive aggression towards oneself. And ukiangalia how men commit suicide,
aggressively.
There is no chance for survival. It's like they go in for a kill.
Yeah.
You know, but women, the means are different. Different. Not so to save.
Yeah, literally as men tunaleta pride yetu kwenye kutaka kujiua. Yaani kwamba bora nijitupe gorofani. Chances kwamba hamna chance ya kusurvive. You know? Gosh.
Yeah, and so ukiangalia, the biggest thing there is now just teaching people to be emotionally intelligent. From an early age, as parents, as society, we can coach kids to be okay with expressing, and we can be okay with them expressing. So kama ile mtoto wa kiume analia usilie, wanaume hawalie, unamfundisha nini? There's soft emotions, sijui ya kulia nini, usilie. Wewe kama una hasira, unaona huyu mbabe, mpige wala kupiga wala muonea, unamfundisha.
Na tuna wababe wa mtaa. Yaani growing up, babe wa mtaa, babe wa shule, babe sio nini. Growing up vitu vilikuwa very common. Leo kuna mtu anajua kabisa mtaani agusu.
Yeah.
Yaani na ukiwa mshikaji wake you're good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all of that affects our communication, especially when as we're talking about, there's things that we don't communicate about. Maana tuna communicate, lakini not the important, like the vital things that will in turn, in a way, greatly impact our mental health.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about how do you, this is from a personal experience as well, how do you deal with the things that you don't want to hear? It happens. I mean, sometimes watu wanakuambia vitu ambavyo hutaki kabisa kusikia. You know?
Yeah.
Me shafika intervention na familia back in the days. Kwa pale Michael Joe I was like, okay, this is an intervention. Wakanichana kweli pale.
Tumekuvumilia sana.
Bro, sister nani. Na bro alianza kusema hii intervention. I was like, what? It's happening to me. You know, so how do you deal with that? Well, you personal, but also, I mean, if you have an idea about we as men, how should we deal with that?
Yeah, so as a person kwanza, imekuwa ni learning process ambayo imechukua muda mrefu sana. And I think sema kidogo, personally actually working in the consulting business inasaidia sana kusaidia, you know, to develop thick skin. You know, because you're constantly sending, dealing with different people, different personalities, sending them your work, and you have to accept feedback. Hawezi ukasusa. So I think that professional line actually imenisaidia sana. Na actually this is not just one thing ambayo imenisaidia, the professional life imenisaidia with my personal growth. Lakini I think as a whole, na nadhani ni kitu ambacho kinaweza kikatumiwa na mtu mwingine yoyote. Fault trap kubwa sana ambayo tunajikuta in ni kuangalia maisha as sort of binary. Ni kwamba kuna you're either good or you're bad, you're either successful or failure, you're either tuna changamoto hiyo kubwa sana, especially sisi wanaume, kwa sababu hiyo drive nini ya kutaka kuwa someone, you know. So inasaidia sana kuwa na mentality ya kwamba event haiku define mwisho wako, kujua kwamba maisha is an amalgamation of so many things, experiences, events na nini. So one event feedback kutoka kwa mtu mmoja haimaanishi kwamba it's not final kwenye maisha yako. So that really helps when it comes to now when you have to hear these things that you're, you know, uncomfortable with, or, you know, unwanted completely, to know that, you know, you have some many other things that you can fall back on na maisha yakaendelea kama kawaida. Yes, and that pamoja na kwamba if what is being communicated is important to the other person, na mimi nimeshaamua that other person is important, then their feelings are valid, their feelings matter. So that's important. Yes, naweza nikajikaza nikajifanya na moyo mgumu, mwisho wa siku nikaishia kama Farao kwenye Biblia. Being hard-headed. I saidi sehemu zote. Yeah, in most cases I saidi. Yes, yeah, kwa sababu you end up just piling up, you know, pressure on yourself. Unaharibu quality of your life, lakini also una affect pia watu wengine who are close to you. Napenda sana mfano uliosema wa intervention, because you can imagine, I think driver kwako wewe pale itakuwa ni kwamba my family, watu ambao care about me the most.
And I think for me it was everything. I said I had known that comment was coming from a place of love. You get it? I know that this is my brother, this is my mom, this is my sister. So these are the people who have been there for me, will always be there for me. Na ni watu ambao wananipenda mimi no matter what. So whatever it is that they're saying, it comes from the place of love. But also they know me. So hawezi kuwa wananisingizia wanachoongea. Hapo vile kuna ile bishara unapiga mnyoka utafikana sema kweli ni nini? You know, you can't shy away from that. So oh wow. All right. So as we are winding up, Justice, you've talked about experience yako, you've talked about your understanding, you also talked about how you've worked on the terms of feedback and communication and vitu kama hilo. If there's one thing you would love for people to pick up from, I love this question. If there's one thing you love to people to pick from all the conversation we've had today, if there's one thing you'd like for them to get from this particular conversation, what would that be?
Yeah, so in a way I think nilisema tayari mwanzoni, quality moja that is in very short supply that we really need, that is really helpful ni reflexivity. Mambo niliongelea uwezo wa kujichunguza, ina include introspection, tumeiongelea kwa kiasi kikubwa hapa. Lakini beyond that, to be just aware of your environment, the environment around you, and to be able to say you know, actions zangu zina determine outcomes kwa mtu mwingine, and those can be positive or negative outcomes. So that's a very useful thing to have in terms of inasaidia pia kuondoa all these things that we take for granted. You know, life isn't like that. So structures zimeshajengwa tayari, lakini not for you to just leave them. You know, they have to be challenged when they have to be challenged. When they are oppressive, when they are negative, when they are retrogressive, they have to be challenged. So without reflexivity, hawezi kufikia hiyo hatua ya kusema let me challenge my own worldviews, let me challenge my own behaviors and thinkings and beliefs, ili dunia iweze kusonga mbele. Otherwise itakuwa tu a pile of problems, na hakuna a way out if we can't sit down and say okay, hapa kuna haja kwanza ya kufanya kitu about the situation, lakini pia this is the role that I have to play in effecting that change.
Wow. Nadia?
I'd say seek to understand people. that's when we can be understood as well. Yeah, so tusikilizane, like listening is an important part of communication. Kwa sababu kama hausikilizi, then hata unachokisema kinaweza kisiwe appropriate in that context.
Yeah.
So we should learn to listen to one another. So just hearing, we should really learn to listen and try to understand. Kwa sababu wote tunatokea from different walks of life. Hata kama tumekuwa wote mtaa mmoja, we're living in different households, we are coming from parents of different backgrounds perhaps with their own experiences. So wote ukiangalia tunaweza hata kids growing up in the same house wanatoka with different challenges just because of the interactions that they're having. So I think biggest part, before you expect someone else to hear you and really understand you, try first to hear and understand them. I think if we all embody that, then communication will be simple.
So yeah, I mean, there's really nothing more for me to add. As men, we just need to do better, man. Yes. We just need to do better. We just need to be better. And then again, if you know better, you do better. I'd like to think.
Yes.
Yeah. This is why we do what we do, and this is why we have this kind of conversation in the podcast, is because it's the only way to improve ni kama tuko na hizo conversation kuhusiana na swala zima. Yeah, a lot of issues was not tuzunguka. Justice, thank you for coming through, my guy. I know it's a Saturday. You had to drop. I mean, the day that we're recording, it's a Saturday. So you had to. You listen to it on Friday when we drop. So you know you've had to drop us some stuff to come and do this thing with us. We appreciate it. If people want to reach out to you for comms, consultants, how do they go about it?
So the website I think is the easiest.
Yes.
So it's idev.co.tz, which is idev.co.tz. Sisi tumeanza kucomply na co.tz. Yes.
That's the best way to reach out to Justice. Now he's a pure comms guy. Kwa hiyo kama una matatizo ya communication, as an organization, I cannot say as an individual, more than Nadia.
Yes, definitely. Ni mwenyewe na matatizo yangu nitakuwa Nadia.
Yes, yeah, but it's actually nasty more than Nadia. So Nadia ni Mind Matters TZ on Twitter and Instagram. There's a link kwenye bio yake moja kwa moja kwenye website. Utaweza kuwasiliana naye. Again, ukinidia ukiniomba number, I'll tell you the same thing ambacho nimesema hapa. So, you know, I mean, the choice is yours. Really, the choice is yours.
Defensive communication.
So yeah, I've made the podcast on Twitter, made the podcast on Instagram, and Facebook as well. Remember, we are back on Spotify, AudioMac, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Boomplay, now a lot of other places where you can listen to your podcast. Give us a rating, share, tell everybody else. Come on, men, the podcast is back. Go visit our website too. Yes, menthepodcast.com. It's .com, right? It is .com. It's www.menthepodcast.com. A lot of things are coming. I'm about to share through the website. So go check it out. Till next time, peace.
Men, the podcast.